You want to hear about a Tehuantepec Isthmus shipping system that could have existed since the 1800s, the 1700s, the 1600s? 1500s, I guess that's when it could have been built. It could have been built all the way back to then. Now, here's how it would work. You would bring your ships up to the point where it becomes illogical to continue a ocean canal. And in the modern era, in order to preserve farming, you would run the canal alongside the freshwater, um, so that you preserve the freshwater in like a upper canal that runs along the bank area beside the one that you carve down to the sea level. So I can follow their path they have. I mean, you could cut here across instead of going around these farms, whatever. The point is, I always design everything with minimal disruption of people's lives. And it seems like every time I see some other group or somebody proposing something, it always messes up maximum people's lives instead of fixing them. Like, it doesn't make sense. Now here, I went around this way, you could go here. The point is, there's split points for shipping coming one way and the other to store containers or ships briefly in like locks, or I mean, just extra lake area. I mean, now this would all be at sea level, and what this allows for, like I've described over and over again, the planet wants to naturally scrub the minerals out of seawater in a continuous process that it's been failing to do because of human interaction with the planet. The planet will have its earthquakes and shift everything around so that ideally there's tidal inlets and there'll be big flat areas. Sometimes they get sort of built up from sediment sinking down from the mountains in big sheets, and then it gets above sea level, and that's bad. Because what you want is an ideal scenario where you have your tidal pools all over off of your main channels that come up in, and then you have the perfect mangrove and whatever setup for harvesting sustainable seafood. And then the tide gently comes in however far up in here, and you're all prepared for it, and it keeps the fresh seawater. Now, what's great about this for farming is that it allows for, of course, the transportation of all their grains and stuff immediately wherever it needs to go. But also, you can then take the shells and whatever else from the sea inlets, and you can use them as, fertilizer when you harvest your shellfish and such. The shells of them make great fertilizer, so I'm told. The chitinous material. Um, so you would get up into here, and it's like 190 feet, 136, 200 feet, gets all the way up to right in here, 275, 262, whatever. So you basically would have to dig a trench that's, it's not so bad when it's just 100 feet to here. And then once it gets up to 200 for this final section, that's a little bit of effort, right? That would be something that would be difficult to do too many hundreds of years ago. But because it's all flat farmland area, it could be done all the way back. Now, these days, it's so easy to do, and I think all of the local indigenous people, if they could actually be the ones empowered, when they go to do surveys and studies as to how they can make big world projects so then elitists that run the shipping can make more money and keep the people poor that the ships are going past. Well, that's why this has been shut down each time, because these people don't want money pouring past them while a few of them are maybe rewarded with positions so that, the general community can barely be painted and, given basic goods so that they're really poor and squeezed, but look sort of second to first world as ships go by. Like, that game has to stop, and it is a game to ruin the world. And those people in the cities that play that game, they need to actually be prosecuted en masse. We need to stop targeting individuals and putting up court cases and causing stress and getting everyone to love it and revel in it. Instead, you count the whole system as corrupt and you say, okay, here's all of the players that were within the system. Here's everything that was happening on different levels. Who cares about the individual? Because this is blue collar crime or whatever they call it. White collar crime? Yeah. Where you're so elite that and you're so set up that you don't even really need to kill anybody anymore. You just are the slavers and running the system. Now, that happens in various ways in different parts of the world, and then they all start working together. So just lately, that system is broken down. So what you'd have to do when you're building this is come in here and get the locals on board, get them trained to do it all with like 50% them at least, and then you increase the number as it goes on. So the concept here is you get in here and ships would be offloaded, and you'd have a cable winch system. So if you're at sea level right here and you have a 2-mile range here to increase the level of the shipping containers from sea level to, let's say, about 600 or 700 feet right in here, because that's the height of the central canal for Tehuantepec area. So, the concept would be things that can actually be done with current equipment and setup that's always been available for hundreds of years. These cable winches, you have these train tracks, right, that you put in alongside as you create these pools. So you only have to go up 700 feet over 2 miles. So then you divide up the amount of feet in those miles by the amount of feet. You create a graph. And then you plan out and create all of your pools so that you have these like reverse ballast, like floating, what would you call them? Skiff pod thingies, pontoon, whatever they are, and they would float on each lake area. And then there'd be like a simple hinge point on them at several points so they can take the step up to the next area. While there's like flotation sections that automatically, as each section gets to where the step is up to the next lake by like a foot higher, it's simply there's like shunts that pop the light flotation tank that's tough up over that lip and then set it down into the next area onwards, so that it's like ongoing different sections doing that in each pool. So what I'm describing here is you're taking the goods and you're floating them up the hill. This is something that Mexicans are very in love with and very capable of creating. All they do is landscaping. So this is just a giant landscaping project. Now, I've seen various people's reacting bizarrely early to what I say. Like there's this other guy who was creating videos that I approve of on YouTube about modern shipping and stuff. And he's not creating his own ideas, he's just putting out other people's ideas. But he's one of the few. I don't even know his name right now. I can't think of his channel, but he's actually got muscles, and he's turned his speech impediment and eye shape angles of growth because the brain is prioritized too much for intelligence. He actually worked out and pushed everything straight enough, like I have. So then there's other channels I've seen where people never developed past when I was 6 to 9 years old, and I had a speech impediment and my brain was supercharged and part of it was underdeveloped. There's a ton of people who never develop their imaginations within their skulls, and then all they can do is take data and rehash it, and that's what most people are doing on all channels about tech and future shipping and stuff and space. They don't have ideas, they aren't extrapolating. Now this is extrapolations right here, whatever you want to say. This takes imagination. So what I've described, I didn't even have to use paint. I didn't even have to go in. It's just logical. So you have these shipping containers coming off of boats. I mean, you could have it set up because there's not much room in here to carve out for boats. You could either have the boats come all the way up and the full size ships, and then navigate a corner with barges that are built into a track that would you're at an airport, and there's the luggage returns, and they get to the corner, and then the little slight pieces, turn and go around again. Well, you'd have to do something like that with ships. So that the barge tugs would be on rails or whatever on the curve. So ship would come in, everything would be offloaded, and then it would curve around and go back down, spin around in like a 180 within the turn trough. Alternately, you could have that turn trough so that you don't have to make as big of a shipment area here. You could have your turn trough happen all the way back at 100 feet down here somewhere, wherever you want to do it, or up here at 150 feet, whatever, figure it out as local populace. And then from here, you could have it transported off of the ships and then floated. Like what I'm saying is you'd still create a canal through here at sea level, but you would make it somewhat smaller and not have the ships go all the way up in here. Now, I'm saying all of this can be done in pieces. You can start out at the simplest level and kind of grow the project actively with the incoming funds of, all the shipping going through and whatever it brings in revenue. And then that goes back into improvements. So my initial setup for the winch, the concept is you have this dividing mountain, and you have these fascinating cracks in the earth that have appeared. Agua thermal. Look at this place. It's awesome, right? So when I saw that, I said, well, you don't really want to make a shipping lane that carves through all the beautiful scenery and through the cliff thing there. And if you go over here, wherever it is, there's another one. Where is that? Another split in the ground. This beautiful. Okay. So they have their energy for the area going around this side of the mountain. So I was kind of looking at how would you go around this side of the mountain? And I kept thinking about it, and it just seemed kind of complicated. It's all the way up 500 feet here. Now I think that the shipping area would be in such demand that you would have to eventually create an alternate route through here, um, with pools up a little faster up to this height, and then you could have a transfer straight along either side around the mountain, at your designated height of 700 feet. Because you see this area, this whole straight area that we can utilize for giant winches and cables. And because you don't have much weight, it's tugging at any given spot because it's all floating. Then, with the assistance of trains that would run alongside the canals, like I've described, um, you can really get some stuff moved. Okay, so I will use paint briefly here. This is what I was going to do it for. So if you have a canal, make the canal blue, of course, I guess. If you've got a canal, however wide, and then you have your train tracks. So we'll put the train tracks in brown. They usually do that, I think. So you split the canal in half with these train tracks. So you'd have a train 1 and 2 next to each other. Train tracks. So it's like, a shipping lane, like a road. So if people are going this direction on the right side and then going the other way for their right side this way, or whatever, whichever side of the road of the world people are used to. So we don't stop here, right? So if you had train tracks here and you have ships coming either way on water, then you would have this issue where you'd be dragging on just one side of the ship, right? So it would just be, it'd be doable, but much easier, of course, if you have additional train tracks holding up on the side of the canal. Like so. Now with the system, barges that you can either make for the canal, or ships eventually could be rolled right through. I was going to discuss that a little later. Like, how would you, if you wanted to preserve a actual large ships and somehow get them without wasting infinite water on locks or electricity to cycle the water back up high again, how would you get whole ships, up different heights to ultimately, 700 feet, so then they could cross? You either go around or carve through the mountain eventually, and get over here where it stays at 700 feet. So basically, I was thinking about it, and you could create, technically, you could make the pools big enough, and you could do it in an alternate location. It's just so messy and difficult sounding, and it takes a bunch of engineering, and that's why might take decades or years to have actual ships get up in here, and then have like big belts, like on treads, like on tanks, that would be on the walls of the canal thing, and then you'd have to like be towing it steadily with trains, right, on either side, of course, that are like winched into a big winch system. So let's say we do it on this one. You would have the whole ship like it's dry docked, but with just a little bit of water at the base to keep it floating somewhat. And then on the sides, you'd have the rollers. So then you'd still implement what I was talking about, where you'd be going up over each section a foot high, but it had to be built for the weight of big ships if you wanted to keep all those shipping containers on the ships. Um, so it's impractical at first, but once you get everything established and you have my mousetrap system going on to train barge canal things, and you're yanking them right up here, and then in this crevice spot here, you'd have an enormous, well, it's not much of a crevice. You'd make a crevice. At first, you could put towers that are just above ground and stabilized in it directions that pull everything through. You could probably get away with it. But in the long term, you'd want to build a giant winch wheel built right into the rock that would spin and have like magnetic counter pieces in the rock all the way around, and you could make it as big as you need it. And by doing this, at first, right, the shipping containers would get up here, and you'd get them up to 600 or 700 feet, and you'd carve a canal trench around the corner, um, because they disconnect from the winch system. Would be the point. You just winch them to here while they're floating, so that it's not taking much energy at all, and then they detach and take a corner and go on their own impetus at a floating 700 feet around the corner and then connect back. And then once you get the whole wheel built and a tunnel underneath of it, then the whole winch system that's giant, that's spinning cables around it multiple times and then through either direction, could you could be going underneath of it, which would be absolutely fascinating and be very well, it's ambitious but doable now easily. And um it's the type of thing that like I would put in a book. Like I made the extension for Lord of the Rings. I called it Wheel of Trade, and I imagined a big lake that's up above the ocean and a giant wheel, water wheel that would turn and bring ships up from the ocean level up onto the lake and deposit them. And I made a whole script and movie series. It was acknowledged by various people I saw online. They said, "Oh man, when are these movies gonna be made? This Wheel of Trade, Lord of the Rings." And I said, "Well, the whole script is based around misogyny, and the world powers kind of hate that because they like everyone to be slaves that are suspicious of each other in different continents. So my movie, like what I'm suggesting here, brings people together too much. Um, Too much sex, can't handle it. The bacteria running the world's shipping system, like they think it's a body in there, in a human body, but it's the Earth. That's what they try to do. Act like the whole Earth is something they can control as a body, but then claim the Earth's not alive or anything. Well, of course the Earth's alive. Everything's shifting constantly. So, we need goods shifting constantly. The system, it's just so fascinating because you can implement magnetic flow impetus on the like concept of the ships coming up through here. The rollers with the buffer pads to keep from things from scraping on metal could technically roll the ships if they're floating enough up each step pretty easily. So, pretty easy to do. And then because the winch system is totally straight, you don't have any strain on it. Zero strain is the goal in the long term. And so long as the whole system keeps moving and you have enough weight along the wire, along the chain, up in here, all the way across the 700-foot area, like you could take boulders from continuous excavation and run them along your canal with the tracks on either side, and you could cycle these boulders. Because see, you can get all the way to here with a 700-foot canal, but then the actual river angles that would make it 700 through here actually curve over here and over here. So you could carve through this instead of jogging around it, but it's too much effort, right, to go straight with the shipping. So at this point, you've already pulled everything to 700 feet and cycled it all the way across. So then at this point, you break loose from that, and you could have a separate winch system, I guess, for assistance and keep that idea going, even though it's a flat 700 feet, just to increase efficiency, I guess. Lower the amount of fuel that's being burnt by the trains and assist engines on the barges. What I'm saying is you break it all up, and there's so much system working together, which you couldn't do before. But now there's, AI, there's computer systems and everything set up so that each thing can create the right amount of tug for the whole system all at once across the whole board. There can be zero human interaction when the system's going. You can't have someone suddenly say, "Oh, I want to increase speed." The whole system has to increase speed. There would be no controls, is what I'm saying, for anybody to do such a thing. And if you took whole ships up in here and rolled them across at 700 feet around to here, and then roll them down, then what I'm saying is the weight of those rollers would create such enormous amounts of electricity and or winch weight that the weight of stones from additional building of the whole concourse on barges would be causing everything to weigh enough either direction. And if you don't want to remove all the stones down from the 700-foot range to the, down to ocean level to transport them somewhere, do anything with them, then you could have them eventually cycling in this area, between the mountain and Santa Rosa, or between Chivela and Santa Rosa. Reforma, Chivela. That's what I was going to put. Chivela to Shivaniza? Shivanisa. I don't know. I don't care if I'm pronouncing it correct. The point is, these stones would create support ballast weight of moving material weight going either direction at 700 feet in this area, so that you'd have enough weight of movement that things cranking up through here attached through wouldn't be in danger of slowing the whole system ever if anything goes wrong. So you'd have enough weight if something goes wrong to lock down the whole system technically for a moment and correct it real quick. And you'd have high-speed response teams that would come in waiting to make sure if there's any issue anywhere with anything going on in the shipping, that they get it fixed within minutes or hours. So other people said what's great about this setup, while they didn't actually talk about it, they just said generally it would generate a lot of jobs in here. And it sure would, continuously. The Rio Grande here. It's called that down here too, huh? That's what they call it up. The riven of the land up there in the US. I've discussed this without going into the details of the system. And on my other computer up here, I've described a series of step canals up to maximum height of whatever it is, 4,400 feet, and that you could have continuous locks ponds that would drag ships up through. And then once you get it up to this height, you'd have a general canal that would run all the way. I already did it on a previous video, all the way up here to where the center of the country has, you know, the Rio Grande that goes all the way up in here. And then you would start dropping it down along the river. Now that would be a huge project that would like require the whole world to be functioning for a while first. So I was just going to say this system can be done in a large scale because of modern convenience of building everything. But for now, we'll discuss this one a little further. So you'd have your winch chain, and so that it doesn't get very heavy compared to the weight of gravity, you'd have towers all the way along that are winching it, assist pulling, you know, slightly. So there's continuous pressure all through the system. And so technically, this winch thing would run all the way from here, all the way, and you get over here, right? So even here, you could continue it on to here, you could continue it on to here in pretty much a straight line. And you can have this shipping lane around this small town that goes over to here at 600 or 700 feet, the float stuff along. I realized that. And then when I got down here, I realized that you could have another 300-foot setup that would service various towns through here. And you would actually have like a lake in a certain spot here. Like this area would become a big, let me try to see here. I had it worked out before. You put in the dam and then it fills up through here a ways all the way really conveniently so that you don't really have to create the canal, except for the fact that it would flood all of the land, right? All the farmland. Maybe you don't care and you just move your towns up to higher height and just have the whole thing a big shipping lake. I don't know. There's not too many people to be displaced and they could just be moved right up the hill. I always say when it comes to this type of thing, there's not really any fancy homes or anything, but if there was some sort of something you wanted to transport, you just slide it right on up the hill, a whole house or something. Most of these houses aren't very fancy, so whatever. Let's see here. So when you get over here, you would drop the stuff down to 300 feet. And have like a intermediate height shipping canal. You'd follow along so it'd be easy to do, kind of along the river while not destroying it at 300 feet, right? Or you could carve straight through here, but it gets up to 5, 6, 700 feet for a second or whatever. Maybe you could avoid that mountain and get through pretty easy. The point is, you have all this water backed up along a canal with little lake spots along it. And you can then have water not only for transporting that is never used up, but you have extra space for farms if there's a drought for watering in the area. Like you build this all up so that it's all supporting the area. So you would eventually get down into here where it drops down below 300, and then you would have your ships come in either to here or here, and you transport the goods down and up. If you look, basically you can have the winch system get all the way down to here. You might have to have some angles, you might not. You could be clever about it and get away with it pretty easily the whole way, so that the weight of stones from the mountains that you're carving through more and more would, create weight at the 600 and 300 point of them being pulled downwards. So then you just make sure either direction you have more weight pulling on the downside than the upside. So the whole system is gravity fed. Like, you're using so much less energy. It's not even funny. You'd be using like 10% of the energy, I would assume. I'm not going to give out hard numbers on that. I have no idea, but just the concept seems like it would do so, make such a, yeah. Anyways, okay, so Jesus Carranza. Then when you get down on this side where it's at sea level, then you can still have the train assist on the boats, on the ships, on either side, and they'd have like, some sort of springy buffer pads on top of the metal, and then they just navigate along, and the boats would be tuned to the trains so that they'd be providing assist propulsion slightly and very efficiently though, and you could do it at such high speed. I mean, I went along where like it's less disruptive to people and it's the right height, but ultimately they'd probably carve it as straight as possible until it gets to the point here where it would go to 300 feet. You just make it a straight line, and then a straight line at 300 feet, straight line mostly at 600 feet, as much as possible. And that way there's no stress on the system, and you can have the whole thing operate for so many decades before, I mean, I guess rust decay on metal chains, but you could of course coat them and preserve them pretty much infinitely. I don't know. It's pretty awesome what I'm saying here, and especially as we've gotten into the 2020s, it's like, come on. Everything can be done on the local level somewhat and assisted a little bit. And then I would assume you could get this whole system up and running within, I mean, if you had the whole world behind it assisting, 50% experts around the world and 50% local workers becoming experts steadily, you could, and I say local, maybe there's people whose minds and the way their bodies work, they can't do the work right in this area, but these people who live, across Mexico and down through the middle America, so you're actually still building your economy in the local area. You're just not taking every single person from this area and using all of them because they aren't the right type of workers. You know what I'm saying? You have to be logical. You can't just work with people sometimes within a 100-mile zone. Sometimes it has to be a 500-mile or 1,000-mile zone. Whatever. Let's see here. I've pretty much described the concepts of what I'm going for, I think. If we come back over here, say you wanted to transport something really huge. Well, you could have it set up just for that occasion, but it would kind of take down the shipping lanes if you only had, one going either direction, one lane with boats lined up along it going along. Then, um, if you wanted to move enormous pieces for some sort of windmills for generating electricity across there, or pieces of rockets that were really huge that are being shipped to different continents, um, you would have a enormous barge that would, you know, be connected directly to all four trains. Just a big old barge. Oh, that's the wrong. Um, so then it would be going along, and you'd have whatever huge things on there thing, and it would disrupt shipping for the day or an hour or however long, as everything would have to be weighted on to take enormous pieces across really fast, because you can go pretty fast. You got the canal and the um, winch and the trains. So technically, even if it's really heavy, if it's in mostly a straight line and gentle curves or however you work it out, you could get something huge across this whole area um in like not much time. I mean, at say 50 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour. I mean, whatever speed is safe, you know what I mean? Maybe it'd only be 30 or 40 miles an hour for moving something that huge. But when you're normally just have smaller vessels that are, you know, like this, going either direction, then, and here's the other thing, right? Ships are different sizes, different widths at heights. They make them all different ways. So the system, um, would kind of have to be based on like each type of ship would have to have its own worked out setup, and then you'd have to have adjustable like spring connection things from the sides of the trains to the boats, um so that they could, work for different ships, of course, because what's the point if all the world's ships that are all different can't actually use the setup? And that's pretty easy to get around. And there's major types of ships that are used. There aren't too many different varieties that are the major cargo vessels. You might be dealing with what, commonly 10 different designs, and more rarely up to 100. I don't know, but you could probably work it out for each one, the parameters, and then just put it into the computer system and say it's this ship with these exact parameters. Nothing's been customized on it. It's obeying all the rules. And then the trains would automatically lock into it and create the right amount of gap force on their tension magnetic system of, guiding, tugboating the sides of the each ship along. The system is totally awesome and foolproof. And I originally thought of it because Greece, has had zero economy forever. Everybody keeps saying it's ridiculous. So I said, well, what I'm describing here, you do it in Greece, which I'm not actually finding. Just a second. Okay, so this is their own area. I wanted to discuss Greece this time. Okay, so here, right, you would have my whole setup at 300 feet through the whole breadbasket of Greece through here. Everything's close enough to 300 feet. So you could ship all kinds of goods in and out along these canals, the red lines, at 300 feet with train assist, floating it along at super speed with like very little fuel used. And then you get over here, and whoa, and you have this big lake you could utilize generally, but same type of thing, the winch and going up to 300 feet. But in this case, you don't have any other side to create ballast, so the ballast would just be everything at this height, and there'd be no down force ballast anywhere at the other end. So I was saying, like it says here, conveyor belt train with overhead cable car guidance. So you'd like have an actual metal rail system that would be taking containers 3x3 or 1x1 at first until you have it set up along tracks, and then sliding them onto boats at high speed. Create your, bay or whatever in here. And you could get shipping moving so quickly and have a storage floating yard up here and stuff on either side. The cost of it all is far lower than most grandiose projects. Like I pointed out here, they built this new bridge and they had to remove the old one because the old bridge is like, see, here's the new one. And then here, I described you'd go underneath for people, underneath of it, and you come back up on this side for cars and pedestrians, and then you just let ships right through. It's the logical thing to do. I can discuss now my concepts up here. I might as well get it over with. You've got these shipping routes here. It's funny, over the last few months, I've been observing this all shift as there's infinite earthquakes and the water yanks and pulls on the taffy like land up in here. It's frozen in chunks and shifts it all with hot magma from underneath. So that now there's actually a low enough passage here through North Pole Lake. See, it's only at 125, and there's all of these channels that run all the way through at like you get only 100 feet and a little more, all the way through. 247. It gets a little higher, but there's so much water, so little area between the water. And you get over here, and it's already dropping back down. Miles Lake is back down to 72 feet. And it continuously connects through to here. And now you're at over here 0 feet, and you have this little nice channel all conveniently already carved through here by nature. And it only goes up to 250. Look at that. Very convenient. So this is farther away from the North Pole, and it's an actual shipping lane that you could keep clear of ice continuously, and you could keep boats coming through every whatever 10 minutes, half hour, and break through the ice all winter, probably. I don't know. Maybe you'd have to not use this. Just like the Earth's weather is improving, so sure, you might not be able to use this from October to March or April or May, whenever it starts thawing somewhat. But that's not very many months compared to how it used to be. And you're going farther down through here. And again, this would have to be, managed somewhat by locals, by Nunavutians or whatever you call them. Original source of nuns, the original Christian religion from Nunavut. I just point out that Christianity included all of the references to all of the legends and magic and stuff. And then in the modern era, everybody put all that away and said that it's both magical and not magical, and you're not allowed to discuss it, and only pastors can. But, and they claim it was that way through all of history, but, Now there's this path that curves through here. And then you see there's these channels that break through, like this one's going in a straight line. 156, 248, 194. I mean, I didn't even see this. This is new. This cracked through recently. I was telling everybody, by the time this gets done, there'll probably just be a straight passage that you barely have to carve through. Because when I created this a week ago, I looked through here a month ago and it was at like 500 to 1,000 feet in spots. And then I wait a few weeks and this happens. I wait another week and now this is happening. Make a straight line here. And then curve it, and you can have a winch system like I was describing here even. This was too angled, but now that this exists, easy winch pulley system. If necessary, or you could actually just carve all the way through down to sea level and have an actual sea level trench through here in a straight line, curve, straight line. It's interesting because as everything shifts, I was looking and I was like, man, you have to come up through here where the lakes connect through at Tehuantepec. But then I looked again later and it had shifted, and then voila, now this is possible. There's now these river connections that aren't all that high at 300 or 350. And this area through here, 200, only gets up to like 200 feet. And then it goes back down. So shipping through here would be pretty limited. I mean, people might come up through here in the future if they're delivering because the weather's better up into Greenland, like people live along here. So there would be some shipping that would happen still out through Tehuantepec, Tehuantepec. There we go. And then you'd have to do slight dredging through here from all the sandbars because they say it's shallow in spots. Pretty easy, it's plenty wide enough. And there's your shipping lane. I mean, when you go all the way up through here, that's ridiculous. Now let's go over here and discuss. You get here to Anchorage, Alaska, and they have trains and stuff for transporting goods and people. And they could increase the speed of that with better train line all the way down into the US. And then say you wanted to take a high-speed train up to Anchorage and continue on past it. So you'd have your train go over here for goods and people and kind of stay up above the swamps and cross over and, go alongside these without disrupting the cities. Cross on over at the narrow point here and go up through this passageway through the mountains. So it gets up to, let's see, 800 feet, 700 feet. Not bad, right? 600 goes down already. And we get right here, 300 feet, 1,500 feet, Portage Lake for, portaging, ports, It's already named for what I'm talking about. Like everything in the world that I'm describing, this should have all been done 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 400 years ago. Various levels of the setup. And humanity's been busy hating each other because they're bacterially infected. And the bacteria says, you don't want to have sex with exotic people. You want to hate them. They're mysterious. Mysterious should be sexy, not suspicious. So let's see, 1900 feet, 18, 17. So it never actually gets to 2000 feet even. And you can carve your way along these canyons, 1200 feet, 500 feet, 200 feet. And then you go up and through this area, through Nuyakuk. Cool. And it gets up through these areas, 800, 400, 500, 800, 1100, 13, 1600. Well, that's, but then there's spots down here where the river's actually at 1,000. So just saying, doesn't need to go that high up. Yeah, when you get up north here, farther and farther north, it gets less and less mountainous, luckily. But then you have the infinite warm mosquito swamps because everything's unhealthy from uranium on the planet, and there's not enough frogs to eat all the mosquitoes. So you wouldn't really want to get out of your train until the summers improve. But you could come through here where I, carved it along and try to stick to some highland in between the low areas if you can. That's at, 27 feet instead of sea level. And then you get up here and you get to this river, what's it called? The Yukon. Kuskokwak Slaw. Anyways, okay, the river's not called that. It's called the Kuskokwim. Kuskokwim. Huh. Okay, then. Here I thought it was called. Oh, is this the river then? Okay, it gets up to past that river. This one must be the Yukon River, right? Yeah. That makes sense. So this train would service all of these communities of local tribal people and connect them to the rest of the world. And all the way up through here, you could have a connection system down to the train. Through here, it's a little high elevation. Not too bad. You could connect it over through here somewhat over to here or whatever. A little shortcut. And have it all set up so that there's actual industry up here without destroying an environment. And I always say when it comes to these types of projects, you just have people, the families of the workers, whoever, come along, and their job is to put in like berry bushes and stuff that work for the environment of the area that will easily survive and thrive without any human involvement after the initial setup. So in the desert, you can set up springs and whatnot to water it automatically. And here, you just put it in. So then you have more bears and all kinds of stuff that hang out along the train line. Not on it, of course. You don't let them on it to get smashed. And then you can watch them browsing on their berries as you whoosh by on your train. And you can actually have people, once you set up all of these high-speed trains, who you have incentives. Like if you're poor, for example, you want a vacation, then it can be sponsored, not necessarily state or government, religious, whatever. Mixture, who cares? Friends. you have stopping points where people can get off and go camping, and you have a whole setup at different stations so that they don't have to pay for their ticket if they put in more bushes and actually check on stuff and like get certified with a merit badge as part of the scouting system. And then they can each year, each month, even if the climate's right, come out and improve the land and not like be a burden because it's just the train's all set up and they don't weigh much and there's one of many people going along infinitely. So they aren't a weight on the system. They can go out, anybody, uh, hang out with the bears, eat some berries, some ground roots, and garden with them. This is everyone in the world's going to be doing this in another 10, 20 years. It's going to happen fast. Everybody in the city, my age or slightly older, we're already at the point of majority. I'm 35, 36. So everybody in my age and younger agrees with what I'm saying to a greater extent by percentage. That how is it any deterrent? How is it a negative that you get a vacation once a year, once a week, once a month, whatever amount for the individual that makes sense, and how long the vacation would be, 1 day or two if it was a week. I mean, technically, you could, with enough high speed rails, you could live wherever on the weekends out in nature and then come back into town after resetting. And you could have shorter work weeks where people get more done because they're completely centered and relaxed getting back from vacation. And then they can work a few days or whatever and get everything done fast rather than goofing around. And they're, putting out a 70 to 110% effort. That effort is exponentially higher with less forced errors, accidental errors, because they're well rested and everything and happy and sexualized. So you get all the way up in here and the names start changing and revealing that the tribes all the way back through time were all connected to places like Hawaii, some of the names, but of course also places like Egypt and all places like the North Pole and all that kind of stuff. And there was a universal language that you can discern out of all of these words. And so when you get up here high enough, the names changed from Atmatlalak and Nunavuk to things that are less slightly Russian influenced. And you get to things that are then suddenly, once again, like most of the world, Egyptian, which is just the original language. Scammon Bay, Emonak, Alakanuk. That's more, mixed. You get the point, though. You can find these Middle Eastern Egyptian names all over the world as the locals admit their own culture. And it's put out there again rather than the names being controlled by a elitist European council or whatever who make everything obscure and hide history. So this is pretty cool because I'm going to be discussing in a video soon. I don't know if I can do it right now. Getting kind of tired and hungry. How you create long bridges over shallow or deep water. I mean, if it's shallow like this, you can preserve the shipping lane. There's no reason to go up into Mary's Igloo, York, Wales, Diomede Island. There's no reason to have a shipping lane initially up here. I mean, as there's more people living through here in the future, as the weather gets better, then it would make sense eventually to have it through here. Um, I think it makes a difference. And compared to going up here, you stick out here and try to get into the lowlands as much as possible. Better weather, right? And I already worked it all out. There's not much roads and stuff, so I created the shipping roads and tracks where they would run logically. Um, there's some Russian towns all through here, of course. Um, yeah, so you carve passages of trains and whatnot all the way through here. Um, I stopped eventually because it seemed kind of superfluous to do it myself all the way through, but I got it established, the routes, and these can go up through to the East Siberian Sea up in here. You could have trains that connect through. Um, this would run inevitably around near the coast and inland as necessary and go all the way down, and you could connect it to into here into these North Japanese islands, which no one's bothered because the weather's been so terrible for decades from all the pollution factories. So as that goes down, and the Proliv Nevelskogo. Hey, my last name's Pro-Life. Proliv. Anyways, my first name is Ammon, and the other over there is Scammon Bay. Lazarev. Okay, so easy bridge. I can't believe it doesn't already exist. Shipping can easily go underneath it. And I always point out with places like here, eventually maybe it'll go under the ocean and the bridge will be foregone simply because bridges fall down or fall apart quicker and you'll have like a permanent impalomoided tunnel underneath. But you know, for now, bridges are going to be around for another 50 or 100 years probably. They'll still, people like them. Um, and you get all the way over to here, and you got your next bridge. Have to run your train line along the coast or through these mountain ridges, valleys, whatever. Yeah, I'm not going to work all that out. I'll let Japanese people figure it out. And this bridge isn't all that long, actually, compared to what's already been made. And it's not very deep, only 200 feet at the middle. What is that? Oh, it's 28 miles. So, right at the range of some of the longest bridges currently that they make. What's that say? White spotted char. Salvelinus leucomanus. Persian trout. Okay. Persian trout. So you just keep going along here. Toyotomi. And when you get to here, there's actual, people and stuff already set up. So it always boggles my mind though. No bridges? I mean, here the water gets down to 1,000 feet deep. Over here it gets only down to, okay, well, there's a brief spot here that you could get across that's up to negative 800, but it's just like 1 mile there or something or less. And then it drops back down to 5 or 400. And then you get, if we reorient, all the way over here to South Korea. And you put in bridges to connect South Korea to Japan. So the industry and jobs and families can zip right across within an hour instead of taking stupid ferries. Nobody likes ferries. That didn't sound right. um, I mean, in here it gets to negative 400 or 500, negative 600. Yikes. Um, Here would be the layout into Busan and over into these island areas. North Korea eventually will have to just be another place that isn't a communist hell, so the shipping will go out through here eventually. Um, what's so ridiculous about this is it's like people would be willing to live at one with nature for a certain period of time each year, each month, whatever, like I'm describing. But the entire system of elitists didn't want that. They wanted to make it so people feel guilty when they think about nature and they couldn't possibly live out in nature. They'd be tearing it apart. Well, how? Why? That doesn't make sense. I get that large industry that is designed to destroy nature does so, but people could disseminate out of their cities at whatever pattern they want, have it all set up, and you have cities with like you get down in here, you have areas Singapore and um whatever this is called, this city area, Jakarta. I described before people actually going out, and you have, especially when there's enough water year round enough, you can easily plant edible stuff and live with the animals, you know? And the animals get more used to people slowly over the generations instead of fearing that they'll be destroyed by humans like they always are. um and with the bridges that are actually been made, you could have made them, the water's so shallow, could have been done a long time ago. Then you actually have enthusiasm. Like if you have people, you have this society set up so that someone's gonna make some exotic love, like it says here, love. What the hell? Love. Robert, Indiana Public Art Love Sculpture, Gandaria City Mall, Jakarta. So if you could go and your loins were talking and you could go hang out, eat some, food that's healthy and feel good in the guts, and then make some passionate love to people that you either do or don't know all that well, depending upon how kinky you want to get, and base it around nature instead of in back alleys of cities where you're getting diseases, then technically everybody's culture into their bodies, down to the bacteria, would become positive, happy, and hardworking. Everybody's been dragged down into a malaise by the system. It has to stop. Now, I discussed previously how you'd create fisherman assistive um, structures that block big waves from coming in and eroding things. And then, of course, you have your inlet canals for bays for farming seafood in among, then you have the farms next to them that are up at 30 feet or whatever. And you have it all reinforced with roots of different trees. Jakarta, they've been whining about losing their farmland and steadily having lower quality of life since what, 50, 100 years ago, and they've never done anything about it. Never built bridges to allow people to actually easily go to other parts of the world. I mean, it's absurd. You have all of this city and then the exact opposite, all this hyper jungle, and no one goes into it. And all of it could be safely developed. You can make roads so that you don't have to chop out that many trees and they can go all over, and then you can come in and nobody gets lost, and you have infinite um locations. You have the entire forest to work with to put in greenery. So you'd have like people, you'd have areas where they would get their plants for the day, and then they'd go out and there'd be designated places. I'm not saying everybody would have to work this out themselves, just the labor would be described by the people that are the real experts, and they'd be sections of forest, and you'd come in and you never clear cut. You just make just enough room for alternative growth while keeping up the vegetative state in the whole area, keeping it green and misty. You don't create deserts. Um and slowly transform each area into edibility. And then at first, right, you might have animals migrating in and eating up the edibility for the first month or year. And then once you have enough projects and people from each town working together in all directions out into the wilderness, then the animals will get satiated. And the initial desperate burst of eating everything as they come down out of areas, because animals will eat whatever's easiest. So if you have it all conveniently set up, they'll come in and start browsing. And to prevent the animals from destroying stuff, you have to think about that as well. And you can create fenced areas where, like, you temporarily put in a fence and build up the greenery and make sure none of the larger animals, deer, bear, whatever, foxes, that might mess up the area just for the first year or something. Like, you could build it all up and then open up the fence, and once it's sustainable, and the animals can start coming in. And you could have, like I described, eventually people scattered out from the cities with their secondary vacation homes that can be, well, time shared even. And um you can have eventually your own feeling like you're established and rich because of you and your ancestors' hard work. And you can have um your cabin, and you can have the fence within it where you have your garden, and then the additional wild garden outside of it for all the animals surrounding, and have it set up so that everybody's assisting each other, and it's an economy of, like, having the greenhouse garden areas so that you can go out and improve nature from the local area without transporting in a bunch of stuff that you're growing. You know, it's just a whole change of the economy. And you have all of your infinite bees and nuts with squirrels and stuff, and monkeys harvesting them humanely so that they're like befriended by humans. You don't enslave them. They come in and you make deals with them and train them. And, animals are kind of dumb, so they enjoy doing what they do repetitively, and you just make sure they don't work too hard and give them the tastiest food rewards off of a percentage of what they're harvesting, coconuts, nuts, etc. And none of this is new. They have ancient temples in um, the desert sands of Egypt across North Africa there, where they have baboons carved into them because they had, like I've described before, baboons that would keep annoying poop throwing monkeys out of North Africa and keep them down in the jungle area. And the baboons were like guards, like border crossing, like poopy monkeys weren't allowed to get up in here and mess with people's lives. And then everything got so deserty that it didn't matter. But I'm just saying, working with animals to achieve what you need is way more useful because they don't, they just sit around like AI with instincts and then do things when they're something enacts upon them or they see something they need to enact upon, and they can be trained easily. So no one's doing that. They're hating on the animals instead of using them. And you don't have to abuse animals. Let's see here. I've already talked about most of my other shipping areas here. You got them going up into these spots. Moldova all the way up in here. And then I talked about turning these into bays of farming ocean stuff and farming vegetables and stuff. Humans can always squeeze into fewer cities and then have ugly, balding ranchers made out of like meat parasites managing the land with, you know, a trillion cattle everywhere. That's horrible. You've been completely abusing the cattle. They aren't doing what they did historically, wandering around like they're supposed to. And it's not like you're using up all of the land anywhere. Cattle could still wander all over the place. It's ridiculous. I guess that's it for now. I've got all of these systems in place that you could use similar winching and different methods to bring boats straight up through. Get them out into the plains where it's flat enough that they can float along all the way to over here and connect into these lakes and then down, get their stuff transported to the Great Lakes. It's actually doable. You break up the amount of shipping across the world into actual areas that it's going to, rather than having mass elitists control from New York or Israel or somewhere the shipping worldwide. The ports have to all become localized more and all utilized equally.